Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're continuing our study entitled Matriarchs, the study of the women that we get to know in the book of Genesis, and we're continuing our study of Rachel. And we're going to talk about an episode we just barely mentioned when we were talking about Leah, and it is their flight away from their father. And so Jacob served Laban for more than 20 years, and Jacob, father-in-law Laban, made it nearly impossible for him to uh, uh, build up his own uh, flock, his own wealth. But God Himself made sure that Jacob was able to build up an enormous flock because of the way the animals reproduced and were born. And there's a long description of that in the end of chapter 30 and the beginning of chapter 31. After Joseph is born, Jacob wants to go back home. He wants to leave Laban's household, but he knows that's not going to be easy to do. And so he hatches this plan to leave secretly during shearing time. Um, anyway, he runs the plan by his two wives, Rachel and Leah. Um, anyway, he tells them about the dream that he had and the deal that God had made with him, or the promise, I should say, God had made with him. Um, and he tells them in verse 13 of chapter 31 that God said, "I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now arise, leave this land, and return to the land of your birth." And this is the sisters are in agreement, and they have great solidarity about all of this. Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, and I want us to listen to this because it's so telling. "Do we still have any portion or inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and has also entirely consumed our purchase price. Surely all the wealth which God has taken away from our father belongs to us and our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you." This is amazing. They say, and they both are in agreement. They both feel this way. What do we even have here? Nothing ties us here. Our Father has seen us as economic resources. He sold us as economic resources, and then He has kept for Himself all the proceeds from the sale of us as economic resources. So every animal that God has blessed you with and all these children that God has blessed you with, they belong to us. Did you hear that? They don't belong to Jacob. They didn't say they belong to us, the three of us. They belong to us sisters. They belong to us. They're ours, which is interesting because later on in the chapter, when their dad catches up with them, he says, "These daughters are mine. These flocks are mine. These children are mine. But what am I going to do?" You know. So anyway, they steal away and they sneak away. Finally, Laban catches up with them. And the thing that upsets Laban, the case that he makes, is that the household idols have been stolen. And we're told who steals them. In Genesis 31, verse 17, Jacob arose, put his children and his wives upon camels. He drove away all his livestock and all of his property which he had gathered and acquired, livestock which he had gathered in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. When Laban had gone to shear his flock, then Rachel stole the household idols that were her father's. Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was fleeing. So he fled with all that he had. He arose and crossed the Euphrates River and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. And yes, Isaac is still alive because Jacob and Esau will bury their father together later on. They get a 3-day head start, and Laban finally catches up with them. And he says in verse 27, "Why did you flee secretly and deceive me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with joy and songs, with a timbrel and a lyre? You didn't allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters Why have you done this? You've done this foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your fathers Jacob spoke to me last night, saying, Be careful, do not speak either good or bad to Jacob. And now indeed you've gone away, because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Lest you take your daughters of me by force. But the one with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings, and take it for yourself. For Jacob did not know Rachel had stolen them. And so Jacob said, The reason I did this is because I knew what you were going to do. You're going to keep these children and my wives and all my by force. And you know you were. But you can search everybody. If you find the things that are truly yours, then take them. And whoever has stolen your household idols will not live. These household idols, what are these? Well, items that were totems in their home, that were idolatrous items, but items that were very valuable to them. When we talked about David not long ago, and Micah saving David, what did she do? She put one of the household idols in the bed and covered it up like it was him. Even later on, Saul, David, those stories were still dealing with these teraphim, these things in their homes, these clay figures in their homes that were somehow ritually important to them. These aren't that size because these can be put in a saddlebag. So we're probably talking about small figurines. Rachel's the one who stole them. Jacob doesn't know this. And scholars, in fact, people who read the Bible and think about the Bible back to ancient times, have thought that Jacob has signed her death warrant in saying this, because we'll talk about her death next time. I'm not sure that the Bible draws a straight line between the two. But anyway, um, she she puts him in her saddlebag and sits on her saddlebag. And her dad, who is so angry, is literally rifling through all of their possessions. And he gets to her and says, Get up off those saddlebags. And she says, I can't because I'm having my monthly time. Um, so he looked everywhere else but there. And he didn't find anything. Jacob gets angry at this point and says, What how much further are you going to go? You've rifled through all of my goods. I've been with you 20 years. You got rich off of me. So what is your problem? And Laban answered, These daughters are my daughters. These children are my children. These flocks are my flocks. And all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters or to their children whom they have borne? So let us make a covenant. Is it because he loves his daughters and his grandchildren? Is it because God said, you better not mess with him? Because that's what God said to him the night before. They make a covenant with each other, Mizpah, saying, a heap of stones. They build a cairn there. May the Lord watch between you and me while we are absent from one another. That is not in any way affectionate or a promise of covenant loyalty. It is this: I can't see you, you can't see me, but God's keeping an eye on both of us. It's a threat, is what it is. But anyway, Laban leaves them alone and kind of leaves the narrative altogether. And good riddance. We didn't like him anyway. But we learn from this episode that Rachel, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. She is just as wily as her father is, and helps her husband best her father in this episode that they have with him. Okay. We'll talk about her death next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.